What's up, gang? It's Jake, your first resident Fraymakers YouTuber, back again with another video. So, recently I put out a video about Hades content in Fraymakers, and it was an interesting experience. Making that video was a lot of work, but I had a great time doing it, so I figured I'd go ahead and try for two. But this time, I'm going all out. Unlike Zagreus, Gunvolt doesn't have access to a massive array of tools in his home game. So I'm pulling from almost every game with a unique ability for GV to use. But that's enough talk, let's just get into it. I think the best place to start this discussion would be Gunvolt's unique gimmick. You see, what sets the Gunvolt series apart from most other action platformers is that instead of just jumping and shooting, Gunvolt's method of attack is tagging enemies with his gun, then zapping them to hell with his flash field. Now, in Gunvolt, this attack is tied to a meter called the EP gauge, so we'll be borrowing that for his moveset. Gunvolt's side special will consist of tagging his opponents with Cerberus, his standard carry in Gunvolt's 1, 2, and Burst. His neutral special, Flash Field, is a field of electricity with ridiculously good range and frame data, but it doesn't flinch opponents and deals downright pitiful damage. In order to increase that damage, you've got to tag your opponents. You've got 3 tags in total, and you can use up to 3 on any one opponent. However, there is a drawback to this. The more tags you have out, the more EP you use. You can recharge this, just double tap down, but if you do run out, you're left relatively defenseless. See, normally, all of Gunvolt attacks would have a slight electric effect, but when you're out of EP, they'd lose that effect, and as such perform less damage than normal. In addition, Gunvolt would take more damage than normal in this state. This creates a risk and reward dynamic, so that the player has to think about how much they want to put on the line for high damage. For GV's down special, he'd use the Crash Bolt. This attack from Gunvolt 2 works similarly to Pikachu's Thunder from the Smash Bros. Series, but with a few changes. It's got much better range, going out further, and it's much faster, but it doesn't deal as much damage and can't spike. For the up special, I actually had to wing it pretty hard, because Gunvolt doesn't really have any attacks that naturally fit that bill. However, I think I've got something pretty fitting for the character. You see, without getting into too many details on Gunvolt lore, GV has a friend called Jewel, whose superpower creates an alternate persona called Lumen, who can grant GV a number of abilities, including infinite jumps. So for Gunvolt's up special, Lumen's wings will appear and give him a boost, similar to Joker's Wings of Rebellion. Of course, this won't have as good of recovery, and won't be invincible like Wings of Rebellion, but it'll still be a great complement to GV's toolkit. Up next is the smash attacks, and if you've played GV2, you know why this move makes sense for the up smash. Dragon Sphere. This is a secret ability in GV2 that has made appearances in Mighty Gunvolt Burst and Blaster Master Zero, which functions similarly to Steve's up smash in this case. Gunvolt charges up and releases a large ball of lightning above himself, which creates a lasting hitbox that dissipates a moment or two later. Now, for the side and down smashes, I'm going to get a little more niche. In a free spin-off bundled with Gunvolt 1 upon release called Mighty Gunvolt, GV uses a charge attack with decent range and quite a bit of kill power. For the side smash, he uses it like he does in-game, but for the down smash, he'll use a variant of the same attack with this version aimed both ways downwards. Less kill power, but more broad range. Now, for the remainder of GV's attacks, there's basically no basis to draw from within the main games. Luckily, we've got one more trick up our sleeve, Blade Strangers. Here, GV's got a wide array of martial arts attacks, so we'll draw from these. As a side note, something really important I want to mention is that in Blade Strangers, these attacks are just normal kicks and punches. But I personally want more moves to feature electricity, so I propose that even these attacks have some slight electric properties. That way, these attacks are also affected by the EP gauge. For Gunvolt's Nair, he uses an angled kick, which is relatively slow but deals a fair amount of damage. For his forward air, GV uses a standard high kick, which comes out pretty fast but doesn't deal much damage. For his back air, GV goes for an overhead leap kick, showing off his fancy footwork and utilizing a useful launch angle. For the down air, GV uses an angled stomp kick, which doesn't spike but does make it very annoying to get back on stage. And for the up air, GV lands a light uppercut, earning pretty pathetic damage but solid launch power. For GV's side tilt, he'll use Knuckle Volt, in which he grabs the opponent before blasting them away with lightning. For his down tilt, Gunvolt uses a Mortal Kombat style sweep kick, It could be a slide kick, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be. And for the up tilt, Gunvolt will use a jumping high kick which deals solid damage and has pretty good knockback. For Gunvolt's throws, they function pretty much exactly like the throw in Blade Strangers. They're faster variations of Knucklevolt, which use different directional inputs to launch in different directions. Shocker. No pun intended. I'm digging myself a hole. For Gunvolt's dash attack, it'll be similar to his flash field animation in Blade Strangers, minus the flash field, of course. GV throws his weight into his opponent before kicking off of them to get some distance. The jab combo is his light, heavy combo in Blade Strangers, which is pretty okay at just about everything. Nothing special. There's a lot that you could do with GV's super, which is why I'm going to cop out. GV will have two supers, depending on the situation. If you're up close, GV will use Luxcalibur, summoning a giant bright blue sword in front of him for massive damage. If you're far away from any enemies though, Gunvolt uses Voltaic Chains, which summons an onslaught of chains that burst into electricity, dealing damage to everyone that gets smacked. Also, I forgot to talk about Zagreus' taunts in my last video, and I don't want to make that mistake again, so let's get into that. Gunvolt's down taunt would be the pose that comes with recharging, like I mentioned before. The animation would be the same either way, but in order to properly recharge, you'd have to press it twice. For the side taunt, I'd use Gunvolt's character select pose from Blade Strangers, playing around with his edgy design. And last but not least, the up taunt would be an homage to Young Link's Navi taunt. However, instead of just some fairy, it'd be Jewel in her Gunvolt 2 form. And for the stage, there's tons of stuff that you could use, but I'm gonna have to go with my favorite stage in series history, Sinner's Row from Gunvolt 1. Set on the buildings overlooking the shady part of town, this stage is bright and colorful and has amazing music. For the hazard, having Kopin or Zonda show up to fire projectiles or flip the stage could be neat, but I really wouldn't bother with those. As for the music, if Super Soul Bros worked with Megu Sakuragawa for a Lumen remix, that would be amazing. Honestly though, I don't think that's super possible, so just getting Kaleidoscape covered in a jazz style would also be fantastic. Something I didn't cover in the last episode, because I'm not as familiar with Supergiant Games' library, is potential assists. I don't really know if the new characters are bringing any, but if Fraymakers wants to represent more franchises in assist form, then Inti's got plenty. From their secondary baby after Gunvolt, Galgun, Ekiro could jump onto the stage and used a charged pheromone shot to turn other assists against their users. From their more recent and significantly less gross success, Dragon Marked for Death, the Witch could show up and slowly craft a spell to destroy your opponents. However, she'd need protection, so you'd have to watch her back. And that's that. Everything I have to say on Gunvolt and Fraymakers. Well, that's not true. I have tons of things to say, like how a Lola track could be amazing, or a Kopin assist could work really well, but I think I've said enough for now. I want to thank y'all for watching. These videos are really fun to make, and I'm glad I get the opportunity to do so. If you enjoyed the video, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, bell, Twitter, so on, so forth. I made a Tumblr. You can follow me there if you want. If not, don't worry about it. And have a good one, gamers.